This podcast is proudly brought to you by Paul's Strength Book, an app for everyone. For less than $2 a day, you can have full access to weight training programs, nutrition, recipes, macro calculators, video library, and you can also track all of your metrics including weight, measurements, strength, and performance. Search for Paul's Strength Book in all good app stores now. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Paul's Body Engineering Podcast. Today I wanted to do a wrap on the most recent bodybuilding event from last weekend, being the ICN Townsville Tropix. Now, I was planning on doing a wrap of the season because there's obviously several more competitions to go where my athletes are involved or we are participating as coaches or will be present, but given that Townsville was very recent, I didn't want to forget detail about particular athletes' results. I also wanted to highlight just the fact that Townsville was obviously a really awesome show. It was the last one run by the Pipers of the Tropix brand, and it resonates with me because it wasn't my first show. My first show was in Melbourne ever back in 2015, but it was my second show, and there was a moment in that show actually came afterwards after I'd competed. I did 3 divisions in bodybuilding of all classifications because I didn't know any better at the time. But when I got home a couple of days later, Scott Piper had sent me something in the mail, and it was the Most Potential Award. Now, for anyone who is aware of this award, they give it out every year or every season to someone, both male and female, who they deem has a lot of potential in the sport. Might be a first timer, might be someone new, but they see a lot of potential. And he saw that in me. And for that reason, that was one of the major motivating factors for me to continue on in the sport. And 40 shows later, 8 years of competing, I've turned pro twice and competed as a pro and traveled overseas and all these sorts of things. So that was probably a major turning point or just a major point in my early bodybuilding career that allowed me to pursue it even further. So Townsville holds a special place in my heart. It's a great run show. It's always energetic. It's always entertaining, and it always draws a lot of quality athletes. And this show is no different. Over 700 on stage, went for 12 hours. And it was by far one of the best I've experienced, in their 10-plus year history. So I wanted to do a wrap primarily around my athletes and how they went, but just obviously give Scott and Kate and all the Tropix crew a massive wrap because, once again, it was another really well-run show. So we obviously got up there and I had a team of 5. So I had 2 teenage boys doing teenage bodybuilding. I had Tamara, who was a figure athlete of mine, and then I had the 2 bikini girls, Sophie and Deb. So even though it was a small team, we were spread out throughout the day, so we were there for quite a lengthy period of time. And upon reflection, I think I was there 13 hours in total. And just as a bit of a side note, coaching bodybuilding, and I can't speak for all coaches, but I know the majority of them that I know quite well have a similar opinion on this, and that is that it's incredibly mentally exhausting. Like, the day is so long. You have to be up for your athletes. You need to be on point in terms of the strategies you have in place to ensure that they peak perfectly to their division. And, you have a lot riding on it too. You've developed and invested a relationship with these athletes over a period of time. It could be months, if not years. And, you want them to do well. You really want them to do well. And you're heavily invested, as I said. And, from a personal, selfish standpoint, success with them draws success for my business, and success on the stage means I'm going to potentially get more inquiry and more opportunity. So, from all of those reasons, I was incredibly fatigued by the end of it. But enough about me. On with the athletes because they're the stars of the show. They did tremendously well. So the 2 boys that did teenage bodybuilding, they came from 4.5 hours west of Townsville in the Atherton Tablelands. They live on farms. They are 40 minutes away from their nearest gym. of which their parents have to drive them to because obviously they're only 14 years of age. very young for bodybuilding, but they wanted to give it a crack. They wanted to give it a go, and they did tremendously well. Their commitment to the sport, their attitude, their humility was first class the whole way, and they did awesome. They got up in teenage bodybuilding as one of 3 divisions that they chose to do, and they had a blast. They both placed. They did extremely well. They never looked out of place. And if anyone wants to see just the energy they showed, jump on my Instagram and have a look at one of my more recent reels, and you'll see them doing a pose down that they clearly rehearsed and choreographed, and it was awesome to see and a lot of fun too. They also participated in bodybuilders first timers and bodybuilding novice. Now, obviously, both of those divisions don't have an age limit, an age category to them, so it's open to anyone as long as you meet the first timer or novice criteria. So they were up against more mature bodybuilders, older bodybuilders, and obviously didn't place in either of those divisions, but they still held their own. Like for someone looking at that lineup for the first time, you wouldn't pick them out of place at all. You wouldn't think, oh, geez, they're a bit underdone or they look very young. No, they held their own and they did tremendously well. So massive raps to those 2 young fellas, both Marlo and Aaron. They did tremendously well, and their attitude and their, I guess, professionalism at such a young age was really inspiring to see. And then, ironically, when it was all said and done and their divisions were all over, we got some photos, and then they drove back home 4.5 hours away. So huge commitment to get this done, really was. So that was the morning. Now, Tamara was also in the morning. Now, Tamara's obviously got a great story because she has competed with me before. I've worked with her for a number of years now, and she did sports model previously as a first timer. I think she placed in one of her lineups in that particular season. I think it was 2020. But I think that was probably the only sort of success she had within that division. And she came to me not long after and said, look, I want to step up to figure. I think figure is where I can potentially do well. Figure is where I want to go. And I thought, okay, well, you're certainly showing the energy and the commitment and the desire to achieve that. So let's give it a go. We're going to need some time. We need to get you into a surplus. Obviously, we need to spend time lifting and lifting well, and that's what we plan to do. Now, through the course of a 3-year off season, she had some major back injuries. Like I'm talking stuff that could potentially sideline you forever or even inhibit you to walk properly. She was under a lot of duress, a lot of pain. She had to get a lot of rehabilitation done through physio. She had to teach herself to basically hinge again and move again properly to be able to strength train. And she went through all of that during the off season while still maintaining a level of strength training that was adequate to her needs while not further impacting the pain levels she was on. And she got through it. To her credit, she got through it. She stuck to the plan and she got through it. She came out the other side and we targeted this season and bang, she went up there and looked amazing. She was shredded. She was big. Her posing was excellent. She'd obviously done her work in regards to that. Now, she did classic figure, 2 divisions, and she did figure, which is obviously involving the muscularity rounds for 2 divisions as well. So classic figure, she placed in both divisions, if I remember correctly. So classic figure is purely symmetry posing. Now, the reason she didn't get higher, in my opinion, and we haven't got feedback yet, is because she was just out-muscled. Now, classic figure obviously is symmetrically, it's about the symmetry, okay? 4-quarter turns, symmetry primarily. Conditioning plays a minor role, but it's about the shape. They want to see nice shape. Big, broad shoulders, smaller waist, good size quad, so almost that X-frame. And she was just out-muscled with bigger bodies, simple as that. But that's okay. We accept that. So then we moved into figure, just the general figure, old school figure division. And she did figure novice and figure 40 plus. Figure novice she placed, once again, really well done. And then we got to 40 plus, and I think that was the last division of the day for her. And, this is obviously an age group category, so anyone 40 years over. And in previous years, I've seen 40 plus divisions, and I've got holy smokes, because these are obviously mature age women. Generally, they don't have any young kids, so they've got opportunity and time to train and train well and train often and have had a base of training for several years. So they're always looking amazing. And I thought, okay, well, this will be a competitive lineup. And she got up there, and it certainly was. But they moved it to the middle, and lo and behold, she won the division. Amazing. And, I caught a photo of her celebrating on top of the podium because she was wrapped. She was over the moon. And so she should be, because it's a lot of hard work and a lot of sacrifice has gone a long way. Now, something that many don't know about Tamara is that she's a chief paramedic up here on the Sunshine Coast. So throughout her prep, she was working shift work. not only servicing the public and obviously attending emergencies and, treating patients and all this sort of stuff, but she was working nights as well. And anyone who has done night shift knows how fatiguing that can be. Now, put yourself under a significant deficit and still turn up to train when you have to, and it just shows the commitment and the desire she had to achieve her goals and getting on stage. So I commend her, and well done to her. So that put her into an overall. First time for her to be in an overall. So that was really cool. So it was a bonus round. We went in with no expectation. We pulled out a couple of last-minute tricks in terms of trying to create a little bit more vascularity, a little bit more salt, a little bit more food to try and fill her out a bit more and just utilise the energy. And, she looked amazing. She didn't obviously win. Overall, they only give one winner for the overall title for the day, but she still did tremendously well. And to make an overall is a massive, massive credit. So well done to her. So then we had a bit of a gap before the girls were up. So that allowed me to sort of sit back and just obviously observe some of the other divisions, just obviously compose myself a little bit because, as I said at the start, it is very mentally draining and you have to be on. You can't miss the opportunity to get your clients ready on time. So that gave me an opportunity to watch the men's open bodybuilding. And, this was a massive quality lineup. And to Lawrence Grieve, General Muscle, as many of you know him as, he won. Now, earlier in the day, he did get pipped in one of his divisions by obviously another athlete, and that athlete ended up in the overall run, the overall lineup with him. But he won. Now, many would say, well, how is that possible that one athlete beat him and then he went on and beat them? And the thing about bodybuilding is, and this is a massive credit to the judges because they judged it based on the merit of what they saw in that lineup. They didn't take history into account. And the thing about bodybuilding is that things can change throughout the course of the day, particularly when you're a leaner divisioned athlete, like figure, like physique, like bodybuilding. But the body can be manipulated backstage. You can pump up harder. You can have more food. You can have more water. You can have more sodium. You can even flatten out. You can stress more. There's so many variables that come to play. And credit to Lawrence and obviously his coach Joey. They nailed down the preparation for that overall, and they got it spot on. So well done to Lawrence. He's a good bloke. He runs a great podcast. I spoke to him before the show, and he's a top bloke. So well deserved. But back into my girls now. So the bikini girls were up next, but Sophie decided to do swimsuit, which she had done previously. Now, I worked with Sophie in a previous prep, but this time around, she came to me several months in advance with notice saying, look, I want to do another season. Let's make it happen. And we did, and we spent a significant time working in the off season to develop her physique, get her metabolic threshold nice and high, and get her into a really strong position to have a really good prep. And that's exactly what happened. This is the best she's looked by a landslide. Amazing. And so she did 2 swimsuit divisions, placed in both, which was fantastic. Lower placings, 4th and 5th, I believe. And she was pretty happy with that. So then we went backstage, regrouped, got her into a bikini. Now, she was first up. So Sophie and Deb still had their bikini divisions to go. So Sophie had a novice division coming up. And this is obviously further along in the day. So the day's quite a long day. I was there for 13 hours in total. So we're talking about around the 5:30, 6 p.m. mark by this stage. And I got there at 7:30 a.m. So we got Sophie ready. And ironically, and speaking of, how the body changes throughout the course of the day, Sophie's physique improved without too much, interference from me. And I think it was just due to nerves. Like, given that she hadn't competed for a few years, there was probably a few nerves and a little bit of anxiety going into the first of her 2 swimsuit divisions. Once she got that one out of the way, she settled down a little bit, got calmer, got more relaxed, got more confident, headed into the second one. And by the time she got round to her first bikini division, she was looking really sharp. Her stomach area had tightened up. Her physique looked a little bit better, less water on it, and she was looking really, really sharp. So I was going in quite confident, thinking, okay, we're going to go pretty good here, I reckon. And I think I said it to my wife. I said, she's a top 3 here for sure, having looked at the other athletes backstage. So we pumped her up reasonably well, hit her with a little bit of salt just to keep things tight, and, out she went. So this was the novice division. I can't remember how many were in it. It may have been sort of around the 13, 12 mark, somewhere around there, which is a good lineup. Now, they moved it to the middle fairly early on, and I thought, okay, this is a good sign. They're looking at her, and they're comparing her to others within the middle of the lineup. And lo and behold, they called them out 5-1, and she finished first. and she was absolutely wrapped. And it was a really proud moment for me because I knew the previous season I'd worked with her was somewhat underwhelming because we just didn't get the physique that we wanted through conditioning. But this time around, we did. And whether that came with more maturity, less distractions, she's more settled in life, I'm not too sure, but she looked awesome. And credit to her, she won. She won the novice division, so that qualified her for a chance to be in the overall. But she had one more division to go. And ironically, her and Deb were in the same class for Bikini Open. So they split Bikini Open, I think, into 4 classes based on height and number of entries. So they were in class number 3 each. So we got them all ready. Deb was in the zone as well. She'd been pumping up backstage, and we got them out there. Good pump up on them. Good pump through. Good circulation of blood through the body to make sure that they were nice and full and tight, and the shape was there. And they got out on stage. They did their thing. Deb was actually first out, and I'm not a big fan of someone being the first person or the last person in the lineup because they tend to be off to the side. Now, the judges and the promoters will always say, well, we look at everyone, we move you around, we always look at everyone. But to me, it does provide somewhat of a disadvantage because you're off to an angle. Sometimes if the lighting's not great, you can sort of be shadowed a little bit. So within probably, I'd say, 60 seconds, they spotted Deb and they moved her in. So that was good. They moved her straight to the middle. Sophie was in the middle as well. And then they started comparing apples for apples in relation to the lineup. Now, then what they were doing throughout the course of the day is they were pushing all the bikini athletes to the back line, and then they call out the top 5. So they did that. They called out the top 5, and fancy enough, that's a terrible term. And lo and behold, Sophie and Deb both got called out. So I thought, great, they made top 5. This is awesome. Okay. Then they counted down, so they placed 5th. All right, the girls are still there. They placed 4th. The girls are still there. They placed 3rd. The girls are still there, and they both looked at each other with a bit of a smile, which was nice to see. So they knew that it was 1 and 2 for Team PPE. So that was a really proud moment, even when the results hadn't been completed. I had a top 2 finish for both of my girls, so that was awesome, and I was really happy with that. And then they announced 2nd, which went to Soph, which means Deb was the winner. So that was really cool because not only was it great for Sophie to place 2nd in an open lineup, which she'd never done before, but this was the only division Deb was doing. She flew all the way to Townsville from Melbourne to compete in one division for the day. So we put all our eggs in one basket in that lineup to try and get her through the overall. So, excuse me, it was a lot of pressure to make sure we got it right, but we certainly didn't. And she brought the house down with the posing, so that was really good. So that put both of the bikini girls into the bikini overall. So that came up 2 divisions later. So, I was quietly confident. Now, there was another girl throughout the course of the day who basically dominated the swimsuit bikini divisions. She won the swimsuit overall title, and she went into bikini and won a couple of divisions, which put her into the overall too. So I thought, okay, well, this is our main competition. She's going to be the one that needs to be beaten here if either of my girls are to prevail and take out the overall title. So the lineup went out, and the judges were quick. They were quick in terms of moving girls around. So they brought Deb straight to the middle. Sophie was on the end, and they didn't move her. So I think they already had a preconceived notion out of who it was going to be. And the way I looked at it, and after receiving feedback, it was basically between Deb and the other girl who had won multiple divisions that day. So they spun them around, and they spun them around, and they made them do back pose, and they spun them around, and it was clearly becoming a very challenging decision to make. And when you're judging bikini, obviously you're not working with a whole lot of muscle mass, a lot of conditioning. The bikini body, as good as it is, doesn't carry a lot of definition or detail to compare to another athlete. So it can be quite hard, and it can come down to the smallest of things, like the way they're posing, their presentation, their smiling, their attitude on stage, their demeanor, the energy they're giving. This all comes down to it. So we watched. They finally made a decision. They did their pose down, and then Scotty, the MC and promoter, called it out, and unfortunately, number 48 won. And I say unfortunately because I was quietly hoping that Deb got the title. I really was, because we'd been in this position before, back in 2019, where she won her open class, went into the overall, and got pipped at the post once again. So, it is the sport, and I completely accept that. I was a little bit, I guess, upset or disappointed, I suppose, more so for my client than me. But at the same time, she did tremendously well, 1 from 1, great strike rate, and we know where we can improve. There are subtle improvements we can make heading into Brisbane in 2 weeks' time. So we got the feedback, and we'll obviously utilise that to our advantage and push into Brisbane and try and bring in just a slightly tighter, better package than we did last time. So look, overall, I was wrapped with the day. As a coach, you want your athletes to do well. That's the name of the game, right? And we walked away with 3 wins plus a bunch of placings. Everybody got something, which is more than, I'm more than happy with that because, they work tremendously hard. Anyone who's done a prep knows how hard you have to work to get to the day, let alone perform on stage. So I always say to all of my athletes, the win is actually getting there, and that's very true, and I stand by that. But it is certainly a bonus, and, as I said, I'm always invested in the day and want my guys to do well. And fortunately for us, we did. So that was Townsville Tropix. So what happens in this space, I do not know in relation to whether there'll be, another event up there in the not too distant future. I have no idea, but I'm glad we were part of the last one. We've built good relationships with the promoters, the team up there. We always say hello and hang out. The judges, it's a really good crew, and they're really good people, and it's an excellent run show. It really is. So. And there was a bonus too. Given that I won the overall title for men's fitness in 2022, I happened to feature on one of the banners, which was backdropping the stage. So that was pretty cool too to see. So now we move on to Brisbane. So whether I do another wrap after Brisbane, I'll just wait and see how the results pan out. But I'm excited for Brisbane. I really am. It's a 2-day event, which means it's going to be a big weekend of competitors. I've got 3 additional competitors participating in Brisbane, so I'm going to be there both days. It's going to be highly emotionally charged, big investment. I'll come out of Sunday and be very, very fatigued, but I love this sport. It's done tremendous things for me. It offers so much in terms of opportunity, in terms of meeting people, in terms of making friends, and just it's the energy and the atmosphere in the community within the natural bodybuilding space is phenomenal. There's no egos, there's no animosity, there's no poor me, kicking stones, any of that sort of attitude. It is really a great space to be involved in. So I'm really privileged to have come this far in my coaching career and my athletic career. But Townsville was great. We had a great time. The girls did well. The boys did well. Couldn't have asked for more. So I'm looking forward to Brisbane. I've already put strategies in place as to how we're going to tackle it for all of my competitors, and it's going to be a great weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. So, look, I'll wrap that up now. So thank you for tuning in. I know this isn't a typical podcast, but I wanted to do that. I think the highlights or the things that people who may not be heavily involved in the sport can take away is that anything is possible. You can achieve any goal no matter the obstacles you have to face. Tamara, as an example, a mum, a wife, a paramedic, working shift work, still got it done. The young boys who are barely teenagers, living on a farm, 40-minute travel to the gym every time they had to train, still going to school, 4.5 hours to posing classes, 4.5 hours to the event, they still got it done. Like, there's really no excuse. If you really want something bad enough, and I'm talking outside of bodybuilding, if you just want things in life, if you've got big goals, realistic goals, make them happen. Don't sit by and hope they'll happen. Make them happen. The only way to make them happen is execution of a plan, implementation of a strategy, and change. Sometimes you've just got to change. So, look, I'll finish up on that. Thank you for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please screenshot and share it on your stories. Tag myself at Paul's Body Engineering. You're welcome to tag ICN Townsville as well because they're really good with their reshares. Now, if you're interested in any of my coaching services, please jump on paulsbodyengineering.com. I've also got Paul's Strength Book, a training app. First 5 days are free. So jump onto that, have a look. It's very affordable. It's very comprehensive. It offers everything you need to get started and really make some inroads into your training and health and fitness journey. So without further ado, as I say to every client, every single day, have a great day.